Hey, what's up, Bulldog? So I want to do a book review today. I've been on pretty much a tear reading books as I've been training for a marathon, so I've been listening to a lot of audio books as I've been running. Although I am starting to like listening to music a little bit because it helps me go a little faster. But I've got a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. I can't remember. I think maybe Joe Rogan had recommended this book. It's called Undisputed Truth, okay? And it's by Mike Tyson and Larry Sloman. And damn, this is basically the biography, the autobiography of Mike Tyson. And, it's really, really fucking interesting. I thought it was, it's one of those books where I was like, I don't know, do I really need to, am I going to really get some real examples out of life from listening to Mike Tyson? Sure, he's a great champion and he's done a lot of things, but, whatever. It's not quite the same caliber as like an Elon Musk or something like that. But in some ways I was wrong. And in some ways I was right. I mean, there's definitely not as much philosophical wisdom that you might find in a book like this, but it's a story. And it's really interesting to see Mike Tyson. I think to see what he actually is and what he represents and that struggle. I feel like when you look at his life and you look at the story he tells you, it's this constant struggle between what he wants the world to perceive him as and what he wants to be and the validation that he wants to receive and what he actually is and how he views himself, right? It's really, to some degree, it's a sad story, right? Because if you look at Mike Tyson, he was and he still had this image of this kind of fat kid that was scared and cried a lot, right? So this weak kind of bullied kid, right? That became Iron Mike. But Iron Mike was not really truly who he was, right? It was this front that he put on, that he got into the ring, but he actually became that. He actually at the same time held in his mind this view of himself of this weak, sort of picked on kid, okay, at the same time that he was knocking the fuck out of people, that he was fucking doing all kinds of cocaine, sleeping with, thousands of women and all kinds of crazy ass shit that he was doing, and just fucking knocking people out on the street for no fucking reason because they looked at him wrong. So he was this Iron Mike, this fucking fierce person who wanted to hurt people in the ring. But it wasn't really him. He never adopted that self-image fully, even though he was playing that persona. And, he had a lot of dark stories in his life. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of amazing to see that he could achieve what he did with neglecting training for such a long time, being high on fucking drugs and alcohol and partying and getting fat. And still fucking knocking people out in the ring, still being that champion. It makes you really wonder, what was that special sauce? Unfortunately, the book doesn't actually say what it is. I think he has a little bit of an idea of it, is that he had such a huge ego of who he wanted to be that he had to be that. He had to be this Iron Mike. He had to be this guy. He made $100 million, perhaps more than that. He lost it all. Right now, he's he was in 2 Hangover movies. Still doesn't have much money. He was in and out of rehab. Doing drugs. Just he reveals it all the cocaine, the allegations that he had. I mean, he went to jail for rape. He's got his story. His story sounds pretty legitimate to me when you hear him tell it, or him biting the ear of Holyfield, right? It's interesting to see his story and his perspective on this, and just his perspective on life now as he's gone past all this and he's just trying to live his life. And it's a good story. It's worth reading simply for the fact of realizing that and the thing I was thinking about when I was listening to this was how you can have this perception of yourself. I mean, you could be that scared, socially anxious, person who feels weak and pathetic and picked on, and you could become Iron Mike. You could flip that switch and you could decide that that's what you're going to become. Now, I think that he didn't really integrate those 2 personalities together. And that's why he faced so much trouble, is that he was still seeking that external validation. He was never proud of being Iron Mike. It wasn't who he wanted to become. It's who he felt like he needed to become. and so he never accepted that, and so his self-esteem suffered. But it goes to show you, right? I mean, I think it's a good example there where you can see that you can become something way different than what you are now. And I know this from personal experience because I am completely different. I am someone totally different than who I was. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I accept and embrace that. Like I stepped into that. I don't need the external validation and the feel the need to be this person for any reason besides that it pleases myself. So it's stuck, right? It is me now. Whereas, you can see a story of a man wearing a mask here, Mike Tyson, and you can sympathize with it. You can empathize with his story. I found it to be just very, very interesting. So I don't know how to describe it other than that. I know that's like a very a very vague word, but I've given you a lot, I think, about the book. It's definitely one that I would highly recommend because I think there's a lot of insights, like I said, in just seeing. And also, the other thing is like the story of this whole like life of, this is where it can go if you get involved too much heavily in the drugs and the alcohol and the fucking partying and the women and all this stuff. And, you could flush down a career down the toilet. You trust the wrong people. He trusted Don King, and he had a lot of other stories of people that took advantage of him. So, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the mistakes that Mike Tyson made and the ones that he's paying for now. So anyway, check out the book. I think it's worth it. If you've read it already, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to become a bulldog. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.